the Regenyei Light Sparring Sabre by Peter Regenyei. Hi, I'm Nick Thomas. Welcome back to the Academy of Historical Fencing, and welcome into the new year of 2022. So, Peter Regenyei sabres, they were a benchmark for many, many years. We used them going back to the late 2000s, I guess, when they were first coming out. We had some of the very early models, and at that time, steel sabres were quite a rarity, and they were really, really good. Unfortunately, over time, they started to get just bigger and heavier and more cumbersome, largely to do with durability in tournaments and things like that, and also glove size. And ultimately, we stopped using them, which is a real shame because we had our own AHF club spec Regenyeis, which I've still got one left. There's a few of in our club still kicking around. And those were around about 800 gram military training sabres that were, not so different to this. Whereas, over time, just the kind of heavy model, what it's now called, which spawned from the old Eastern model, became the standard. And yeah, it was kind of a 900 plus gram sabre, which, to be honest, wasn't particularly useful for the kind of things that we wanted to do. It basically, you can still buy that model now, the heavy Regenyei sabre. It's a very tough, very stiff and heavy sabre. It's kind of representative of a lot of cavalry troopers' swords in many ways, which is, when we're doing military swordsmanship on foot, not so useful. We really want something a bit more nimble that is more representative of most infantry sabres. And so enter the light model. Now, I will also add that there is another model in the Regenyei lineup now as well. Of course, there are Polish sabres, but they're a completely different thing altogether. There's another bowl hilt sabre, which is the dueling model. I have not seen the dueling model, although personally I wouldn't get it for my purposes because it's just a little bit longer than this and lighter still and doesn't really represent the things that I personally want to do, although I think it might have a place for other sabre practitioners. So my hope with this light one is that it is as it sounds. I was hoping for a return back to what the bowl hilt Regenyei sabres used to be like years ago, and to be fair, pretty much got it, pretty much nailed it. And if we look at the kind of specs of it, this is a 750 gram sabre, so it's actually come out a bit lighter than our old club ones, although that's still kind of in the range of realistic for this kind of sword. I mean, talking about originals, antiques. And there are a few other things that I really appreciate about this over the heavy model. One is the grip size, is that you can now see it's not a massively oversized grip that I can put kind of, spevies and spez lobsters in. It's a kind of a good size for a Red Dragon glove, which is what you want, that kind of size glove, medium sized glove for this kind of hilt. So I like the grip size and length. It's come back down to a much more realistic size, which I really appreciate because a lot of HEMA grips are way oversized, and that makes the kind of handling of the sword a bit clumsy and cumbersome. Also, the bowl is smaller. In fact, it's also narrower. Now, bear that in mind in terms of protection, as it does have less protection, but it's also much more realistic. So I've compared this to, say, some of my supposed Gothic hilt British military sabres, and the level of protection and the size of the hilt is quite realistic to those original swords. Now, like all the Regenyei bowl hilt sabres these days, they're all heat treated, so they're really, really tempered, they're really, really tough, and then they have all these holes to lighten them back out because it's thick steel that is hardened, so it's a very, very robust guard. Now, personally, I never had a problem with his original guards. They dented here and there, but they were strong enough to last the length, the life of the sword, so I don't really have a problem with that. But some people don't like dents in their guards, so if you don't like dents in your guards, this one is definitely one for you because this is a very, very, very tough, hard guard. Okay, what else? Well, it's got a threaded tang, which is came from the original Eastern model, and of course has been replicated in the latest Kvetun Eastern models. And that means that you can take it apart, you can tighten it up, you can change blades, you can replace blades, and you can do cleaning and stuff like that. I think that's quite cool, although saying that, whenever I've had to replace blades on this kind of sabre, the whole sword has just been destroyed. It's lived its best life and it's done for, so I've never actually replaced a blade on this kind of sabre personally. But it's a kind of a useful feature, and swords becoming loose is a frustration, so that could be useful. Right, onto the blade. My criticism of the Regenyei heavy blades is that they were both very heavy, and also very stiff. I mean, really, really stiff. And actually, that's where this one also has come up trumps, is that it's massively lighter and has now gained a lot of flexibility. And in fact, this is a lot more flex than the old Regenyeis used to have, our old club ones and stuff like that. So I think this flex is absolutely great. This is much more in line with modern training sabers that I like. Excellent. And the weight is generally pretty good. Now onto that specification. Therefore, being as the size of the hilt and the mass and the flexibility has all been improved, am I happy with it compared to both the old models that we used to buy and what else is on the market today, like Kvetun, like Krieger, all these other things that are out there? Mostly. Okay, so I think there's one, maybe two flaws with this sword. And when I say flaws, they're not really flaws because they're actually quite a personal thing. So one is the balance. For me, this balance is, I think, at about 13 centimeters, which is a perfectly good balance for lots of sabers. But for me, a fairly light total weight bowl hilt saber of this type, I'd like it to be a bit further back. So, you know, when I'm using stirrup hilt sabers, I'm often pushing 14, 15 centimeter balances. But with this kind of lighter blade, lighter, straighter blade on a bowl, and comparing to a lot of originals, I'd like to see that pushed back just a tad. Basically, somewhere around 11 centimeters is my ideal for this kind of sword. And I think basically, considering the total weight is 750 grams, I think there could just be a little extra hilt weight. Maybe widen the guard out just a little bit, or put a back strap on it, or thicken the steel of the guard. There's lots of options, but personally I'd like to see this just pushed up about maybe 30 grams of hilt weight, push it up to about 780 roughly, and that would bring that balance back to exactly where I would personally like it. But again, balance is very much a personal thing, down to what you want and how you want to use the sword. But for this type, I would like it just brought back a tiny bit. But it's not bad. It's not like the heavy one, which is cumbersome. This is actually not a cumbersome sword at all. As you can imagine from a 750 gram, roughly 13 centimeter balance sword, it's not slow. And the other thing is the grip. So this grip shape is roughly in line with what Regenyei has been doing for sabers for a very, very long time. And they're okay. But personally, I like grips that have realistically a bit of a bulge here, like most Napoleonic British swords do, or much more of a kind of a crook at the base that gives you a bit of leverage against the bottom of the grip there. So it's not unrealistic and it's fine, but I think there are some better things out there now, so I think the grip shape could be improved very, very slightly. So I have used this. I've used it for a few sparring bouts. I'm now going to sell it on into our club because I bought this very much as a test product to really see, are Regenyei sabers worth buying again? Because for years they haven't been, they just haven't really matched the kind of specification that we've really wanted and needed. And the answer is yes. There are actually a few things I like about this more than the Kvetun. So I use the Kvetun Eastern sabers a lot. I've got the standard models and I've got custom bladed versions and all kinds of things. They're they're just excellent, really excellent. But there are a couple of things that I like about this more than the Eastern Kvetun model. One is the overall size, blade length, grip length. It's just a little bit smaller. And if I compare this to antiques, this is just a little bit closer in terms of the guard size, the grip size, and the blade length. It's just a little bit closer to the originals, whereas the Kvetun is just a little on the large side. But I think the Kvetun is a slightly better product all round, because the the dumbbell blade cross section is just fantastic. The grip is really, really nice, and so I think in balance, the Kvetun Eastern is a slightly better sword than this. But this does replicate some of the originals just a tad better in my eyes, depending on which ones you're looking at. So it's kind of nice, but again, the balance isn't as nice as the Kvetun. So swings and roundabouts, doesn't it? Which would I buy over the two? I would buy the Kvetun Eastern over this, but it's a tough call. I think with a few little tweaks to this would be perfect. And that's nice to see, because we had to just stop using Regenyei sabers for so long. So if you're looking to buy a bowl hilt military training saber, and don't be fooled by the term light, because it's not that light. When people say light saber, they usually mean light saber, they usually mean something like not a gymnasium, more like a dueling saber. And this is nothing like a dueling saber. This is a full weight military type saber. Even though it's only 750 grams, you handle the blade. This is very much a full weight infantry saber. Would I recommend it? Absolutely yes. But just consider the fact that for its weight, the balance is a tad forward, not hugely, nothing horrendous, and the grip shape might not be suited to all tastes, and the protection is less than some of the competition, but also more realistic as a result. So would I recommend it? Absolutely yes. I think it's a really good training sword, and I'm really glad to see Regenyei return to form with something that is much better suited to what we want to use. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already.